Good morning and Happy New Year, Osmonauts, Cosmonauts, and everybody in between. I'm Kevin Barry. It is, oh my gosh, it's 2022, January 5th. Updates from the lab. We have Greg Osuri from Akash Network, and we are going to get started in just a moment. If you don't know, Osmosis Updates from the Lab occurs every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. UTC. On the Osmosis.zone Twitter space. I mean, you know that because you're here right now listening to this, but if you're listening to this in the future on YouTube, then wake up. We go over all the latest news and plans for Osmosis with hosts Dynamic Manic, myself, Kevin Barry, and co-founders Sunny Agarwal and Josh Lee. And also, just a heads up, today, 3 hours after this Updates from the Lab January 5th broadcast or call, the Osmosis community the Osmosis community is hosting a town hall at 1 p.m., 6 p.m. UTC in the Osmosis Discord Lounge. For more info, you can check my Twitter feed. I'll post an article all about it, and also it's on all of the it's on the Osmosis.zone Twitter, and it's also on the Osmo Support DAO Twitter. And if you don't hear about it and you're into Osmosis, then I don't know what you're doing with your life.
There's a YouTube link too.
Oh yeah, there's also a YouTube link. We'll post all the links, but please come to our community town hall. It's going to be hosted by Sunny and myself and members of the Osmosis Community Support DAO. All right, that was a mouthful. What's up, everybody?
Yeah,
how you doing, Eddie?
I'm good, man. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I mean, we've talked obviously before this, but publicly, I say Happy New Year.
Yeah, that's what I was going with.
All right, so I didn't mean to just throw you under the bus, dude.
It's all good.
Oh man, I'm actually really psyched about speaking with Greg from Akash today because it's one of the dApps associated with Cosmos and Osmosis that, to me, like instantly, I could see the utility, the value, and a lot of exciting possibilities.
Yeah, Akash is like one of the godfathers of Cosmos, in my opinion.
Is it Akash or Akash?
Akash.
We'll find out.
Tomato.
We're going to find out pretty quickly.
Yeah. I'm sure Greg will correct us.
He will.
Can we get Greg up here?
Or Sunny.
Yep, just sent him an invite.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Happy New Year, Sunny.
Happy New Year, Sunny.
Happy New Year, guys.
I guess should we go over? I mean, we have Greg's our main guest. I mean, he is our sole guest today. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So should we do some brief updates? I mean, it's not like nothing's been happening on Osmosis.
Well, it's been 2 weeks since we've done
Yeah.
it. So.
I feel like a lot has happened.
Yeah, so, well, what's happened? I guess, I've been saying for a while, I actually started writing an op-ed called 2022 will be the year of app chains, and 2022 will be the year of Cosmos or whatever. But it's like, man, 3 days in, okay, that was a bit faster than I expected. It seems like everyone is talking about Cosmos right now, which is nice. So obviously a lot of traction on the metrics from the DEX. So we kind of hit multiple all-time highs in the last couple of days. So in 2 days ago, we hit the highest, we broke $1 billion in liquidity on Osmosis. And then for the past 2 days, we've been breaking all-time highs on volumes as well. So yesterday was the first time we broke 100 million daily trading volume, and broke well past that with 120 million, which is almost 50% more than the last all-time high on volumes. So that's always good to see that. I think that a lot of people and it looks like today there's it might be even higher because it's only we're already at 56.3 million for the day today. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, basically, I think a lot of people focus a lot on the TVL, on the liquidity, and I think that is an important metric because that sort of is the stickiness of the DEX. But then at the same time, I think volume is sort of really the real product of a DEX, right? The liquidity is there to bring to attract volume, and so I guess the volume is sort of the metric that we kind of try to track more closely, and so it's great to see that's all, and also because the liquidity can also just be increasing from like the price increase. So one thing is nice that if you go to DeFi Llama, you can actually see the liquidity in terms of Osmo instead of just in terms of dollars. So we can actually see that, hey, like, yes, of course, like, liquidity increased a lot because of the recent price increases, but there's also just been like a consistent increase in like actual new assets being added as well. Because if you convert it to Osmo value, you can see that even that's going up as well. And then you can look at stuff like the UST liquidity, right? So because obviously that would not be affected by price movements, as that's a stable coin, and so we can see that that's also consistently going up as well. So yeah, I think that these are all like sort of like really good metrics that we're watching. So yeah, what else? So there was a tweet from the Osmosis.zone account a couple of days ago talking about like, hey, these are sort of the big things that are coming down in the pipeline for like the next couple of months. Like, I don't want to say like Q1, but like, in the next couple of months for sure. So, I think the 5 that we had that were listed there one was the CosmWasm. So, as we talked, as we mentioned, we'll try to get Ethan Fry on maybe next week to talk a little bit more about like updates on how the progress of that is going. But yeah, basically, they're working on releasing a CosmWasm 1.0. That's like going to be a stable release that we can like feel safe, with the long-term support of getting that onto Osmosis. Other ones would include, what else was there? There was the Superfluid staking, obviously. So, I think everyone's pretty familiar with that at this point. If not, there's the YouTube videos from Cosmoverse. You can take a look at that. LBP 2.0, which I believe we talked about a bit last month during some of the LBP related updates. But yeah, so that that's another one. The next one is Ethereum integration. So the Cosmos Gravity Bridge actually is technically live right now, but we're actually waiting on a couple of features. We're waiting on an upgrade just so it can ship some of the UX features that we want. Particularly, we want to make it as seamless as possible for users to onboard from Ethereum. So it should just be like a one click that, just as easy as it is to come over from other IBC chains onto Osmosis right now, we want to have the same UX here. So, just basically making sure that the Gravity Bridge chain is using the BEC32 IBC feature that we had developed. So the BEC32 IBC feature is, it's actually a feature that I think will be useful for like all Cosmos chains, but I think the Gravity Bridge will sort of be the first test user of it. And what it is, I think I may have talked about it, but may have been a while ago, so I can refresh on this one, which is, currently when you do, there's 2 types of send transactions on a Cosmos chain. You can either send to an account on the same chain, or if you want to send to an account on a different chain over IBC, you have to like pass in all this like stuff about like channel IDs and it's a different transaction type, and it's just harder to especially for wallet integrators. It's it's more work because people may have saw that Trust Wallet had announced that they were working on an Osmosis integration as well. So we've been helping more wallets and stuff on board. And one of the things that we had to help walk them through is like, hey, these IBC transfers actually work differently than the normal transfers. And so the point of this BEC32 IBC feature is that we actually trying to make the functionality of normal transfers more similar to IBC transfers. And so basically, so BEC32 prefix is like, in every Cosmos address on different chains, they all have this different like prefix at the beginning. So on Osmosis, it would be Osmo, but on the Cosmos Hub, it says Cosmos. On Akash, it says Akash. And so, we basically we can build an on-chain like mapping between these prefixes and what IBC channels that refer to those prefixes. And so when I make a transfer using the let's say the Kepler send functionality on Osmosis, I just say, hey, send these atoms to Cosmos1, blah 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 blah. It should automatically know and say, like, turn that into an IBC transaction and send it to there. And then for example, if we get this feature onto something like the Cosmos Hub, one of the use cases that we're really interested in is that then you can, like, when you withdraw from an exchange or something like Coinbase, you should just be able to put an Osmo address in that withdraw field, and so it will automatically show up in your Osmosis account, because what basically Coinbase would end up sending to that Osmo account, which will then automate the whole IBC process and just remove one more step from the users to have to do. So that's that Bech32 feature that we're working on with. And so yeah, the Gravity Bridge will be sort of the first test user of that feature. And then the final one that we had listed in that in the thread was Stableswap. So currently there's one stablecoin on Osmosis, which is UST. But once the Ethereum bridge comes live, there will obviously be more stablecoins as well. And
Hey, Sonny, can you hear me? I'm not hearing anybody. I think we should.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay, cool. So what happened just now? Like, did you guys hear me talking for like 15 minutes? I think we should reboot.
I couldn't hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? What part did it cut out?
You cut out the last 1 minute.
Okay, what was the last thing I mentioned?
The Bech32 you're talking about?
Oh,
support. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So like I mentioned, I don't know if you guys heard this, but I think one of the main use cases that we're looking for there is once we can get this Bech32 routing feature on the Cosmos Hub, people will be able to withdraw funds just directly by doing, let's say on an exchange like Coinbase or something, as the withdrawal address, you should be able to put an Osmo address, and it will automatically know, like, hey, this is actually an IBC transaction, and it will route it correctly that way. So that's sort of one of the main features that we're looking for from the Bech32 routing. And then the last one, big one that's coming down the pipeline is the one that was in the list was Stableswap. So Stableswap is an AMM that's more specialized for like assets, so especially stablecoins. And so currently the main stablecoin on Osmosis is like UST, but we the Ethereum bridge comes live, we imagine there'll be more stablecoins, especially such as USDC, for example. And I think one of the big markets I think Osmosis is well positioned to capture is the UST to Ethereum stablecoin Stableswap market, because if you look at something like Curve has about $30 million of UST liquidity sitting on it in its UST pools, but Osmosis itself as a whole already has like $70 million of UST liquidity. And I think that once we have a solid stable swap between UST and USDC, this could be sort of the main liquidity bridge between the different between UST and the ETH ecosystem of stablecoins. So that's like the other big thing that's coming that was mentioned.
Hey, Sonny.
Yeah.
I know I promised not to interrupt you too much, but I'm just saying this because I think for the first 10 minutes of the call, I couldn't hear anything, so I was talking. I had no idea, so I don't know what you said, but what was the first thing that you said? Was it Beck 32?
The Beck 32 routing was about the making it so transfers transfers on one chain act very similarly to IBC transfers.
Gotcha.
Or I guess more the other way around. So in the Kepler send field, I should just be able to say hey, send UST to Terra 1, blah, 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 and it will know to automatically send that UST to that address rather than having to go through a separate process for doing IBC transfers.
Gotcha. And for anyone who hasn't done an IBC transfer, it feels like heaven. It's a really beautiful, in terms of how simple it is.
Cool. Is anyone talking?
No, I don't think anyone's talking. So I can. So those are some of the main big announced stuff that's working on. There's also some other stuff that we're working on right now that maybe can be we'll share as it becomes a little bit more fleshed out and ready. That's definitely sort of where we're at right now. I think that's about it. Anyone have any? Maybe we can jump into talking about Akash for a little bit, and then we can go into Q&As at the end.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hey, I just want to say hi, Greg. I don't know if we got to interact before this, but welcome. And I thought I read an entire bio about you in the first 10 minutes, but apparently my mic wasn't working. So
No.
I don't know have you been introduced?
I don't think so, but sure. Okay. Short intro.
I just want to say that I have this from the notes from Stevie Wolf that you are the founder and CEO of Akash. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, Akash. Akash means the sky in Sanskrit. It's where the clouds are created, so that's hence the name.
Perfect name. Akash. You're a computer scientist and applied economist who's been working in the field for over 25 years. You founded Angel Hack, a global hackathon network that, among many other things, fostered the development of Firebase, which was bought out by Google to become their mobile and web app development platform. And according to our notes, you and your team began developing Akash Network in 2017, originally on Ethereum, but then you quickly switched over to a sovereign chain, and you've been a big contributor to the Cosmos ecosystem ever since. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for the introduction.
So please talk to us about kind of, what you provide, how Akash is different from some of the competitors out there, and how you guys have been working with Osmosis.
Absolutely. In the simplest terms, removing all the buzzwords, Akash is essentially a marketplace to trade compute cycles, right? So people that have unused compute cycles, ideally a cloud-grade compute, can offer that in a market wherein the price is driven by an auction mechanism, a reverse auction mechanism, to people that need compute. And the outcome is a significantly lower price, right? So Akash right now offers anywhere from 1/3 to 1/5 the price point Amazon offers. And the system is designed in a way it's permissionless and open. So anyone can participate in this economy without needing any permission, making it censorship resistant as well. So effectively, if you combine all these properties, it is the first decentralized cloud market There's permissionless, self-sovereign, and open, right? And one of the key sort of like properties you'll notice while using Akash is extremely composable because of these underlying properties. So it's really designed for a modern day developer in mind. If you think about the cloud, the current infrastructure, which is essentially comprised of four major companies: Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Alibaba. All these control about 80% of the market share. They were really designed in the last decade, right? In 2006 is when they showed the market, and they haven't really evolved with a developer in the mind. So Akash has been redesigned or reimagined cloud and designed for a modern era. So it's a fun tool if you're a developer to use. And how does it differentiate with others? Generally, I mean, so there are clouds that kind of came before Akash with the same value system, and there are the clouds that came after Akash. What Akash really, I guess, revolutionized or introduced to the world is the notion of generic compute, right? So before Akash, you had iExec, you had Golem, and several others that had their own sort of like ideas on how this compute platform can be delivered. So most of them went higher level, application level. So Golem specifically said you can do, machine learning style, supercomputer style, grid style computing, right? They didn't really do any generic computing. Same thing with iExec. iExec went a little bit generic with introduction of tasks, but you can only do background tasks. You can't do long-running jobs, right? So long-running jobs in the sense websites or API servers that are always there serving a user. Short-term jobs are something like a batch job where you run the job once and you're done with it, right? You do a computation job. So there was significant emphasis either on like verifiable compute or short-term jobs before Akash. After Akash, we saw the notion of long-running jobs, right? So Akash was the first platform that could actually reliably host a website or an API, pretty much any Web2 application that you are used to hosting on Amazon, you could host it on Akash. And then you have the copycats that came after Akash. The latest and the most loud one would be Flux, right? So the difference between Flux and Akash is Flux is permissioned. You cannot just host an application. You need approval from unknown parties in order to host your application. So you're limited to what you can host, right? And there are others like StackOS and whatnot that pretty much do what Akash does and try to vampire attack or hashtags and employ that nasty techniques. But really, what Akash is really positioned as this first composable decentralized cloud. If that makes any sense.
It does make sense. I had one question about when you were talking about the copycat, I guess, long-term job providers like Flux. So what you're saying is that if they require some kind of approval, that makes them less censorship resistant. Is that what you're saying?
Of course, and also makes them useless, right? So, for example, if you want to do continuous deployments, right? So Osmosis, I believe, is experimenting with putting their front end on Akash now. A front end needs continuous deployments. You need to deploy multiple times a day. So imagine getting an approval multiple times a day from a board. That's just not practical, right? And also, you can't, something like Flux is so simple, right? There's a lot of emphasis on building UIs, right? Or web UI for deployments. Building UI is easy. Building UI the right way is hard because when you build a UI, you tend to make choices in terms of limitations of what you can do. For something such advanced as a cloud computing infrastructure, building a web UI means you're limited to what you can do. So if you go to Flux and try to deploy something, you're very limited on like configuration, right? Whereas Akash has something called SDL, which is hypercomposable. And we're taking it further. We're going to make it extensible in terms of using variables and actually logical notations into the SDL itself. So it's going to be it's sort of like, by focusing on composability, you can actually, utilize all the power that the platform provides instead of limiting yourself from your web UI, right? So a lot of these like small, these complicated things people think we need in order to gain adoption, and projects like Flux have obviously like taken, the short-term thinking about, oh, let's put a web UI and host a WordPress, right? But in reality, you need a lot more than just a simple website and a simple database. It's usually multi-tiered applications that have different layers in order to deliver a high-performance experience, right? So, yeah. That answers your question.
Yeah, you're just adding a lot more exciting details and benefits of Akash, which I feel like I have some homework to do on some of these things, but the hypercomposable SDL that you were talking about, like for other people who are listening, or maybe more like me, like can you break down a little bit what that means?
Sure. So, like, if you were to deploy an application, on the cloud today, just take Amazon for example, right? So you can go through the web UI, and if you're a if you're a basic user, you can like go and define your container. You can say like these are the configuration variables, yada yada yada, and click, you're done, right? But if you're just sort of like using the web all the time, then you're limited to how fast you can move. So you want to be like, well, and also like say something happens, your website goes down for some reason, right? You have to go through the web UI again to bring it back up, right? Which takes time. So a lot of times you just want to automate the process. And in order to automate the process, you want to write scripts. So you want a command line interface. You want something that's not web, because your scripts can go do the clicks on the web, right? So if you want to make your application resilient, you have to be scriptable, right? Now let's talk about scripting. Like, what are the options? Now you can use your command line to do all kinds of gimmicks, because when you have to do a deployment, you go through several steps, right? So, for example, you gotta build your container and push the container to a registry and deploy that and pull the data from the database and bootstrap. You have like several steps. We call it orchestration. So when you're orchestrating, it's when you need to write this code on how your application boots up. So that's where composability becomes extremely important. And that's where SDL comes into play, right? So SDL right now is what we define as stack definition language, is where you define your entire stack. With Akash, it's pretty composable, because you can define a stack that says like Osmosis, for example. Say it gets really popular, like it's getting, and you have users all over the world, and you have users in the US, you have users in Europe, you have users in Asia, and you want to give a phenomenal RPC experience, a phenomenal web experience. Say you want to deliver, each request under the cognitive limit, which is like 100 milliseconds, right? So every interaction, if it delivers within 100 milliseconds, it gives you this continuous experience as a user.
Yes, I love that. And I love how that is. That's definitely how my experience of Osmosis generally is that like I'm not sitting around waiting for things to execute. Sorry to interrupt you. Just love that.
Yeah. So you want to enhance the user experience. That means you need a caching layer, some for each region, right? For US, for Europe, and for Asia. And also you want a networking layer that'll probably deliver within like 50 milliseconds, so that your application stack has another 50 milliseconds of like latency, right? So in order to achieve such an advanced high performance delivery, you need to be able to deploy these workloads all over the world and able to sync the deployments and do so in a beautiful configuration file, right? So giving you the ability to compose high performance applications is where SDL comes extremely powerful. So and you can't really do that in a web UI, right? You know what I mean? Because you're limited. It's like trying to program something using web UI, which is impossible, versus trying to do that in your text editor. So if you're a builder, you know what I'm talking about. So that's the power of SDL. and we're going to make it even more powerful. So SDL doesn't support variables, for example, today. It doesn't support logic, right? That means you can't have conditions in like, oh, if this happens, deploy there, or if this happens, deploy here, right? So we're going to introduce logic in SDL. So we're making this SDL, which is already very powerful, even more powerful by introducing logic and variables and whatnot. So now that becomes a foundation to other important ecosystem projects like Terraform, right? So Terraform, for example, is the most widely used composable language in Web2 that people use to deploy on Amazon's and the big cloud, right? So by plugging Akash into Terraform, you can now start slowly migrating workloads away from Amazon, because now you're plugging into an existing infrastructure that people already have, and we can go pitch people that are using Terraform to just use Akash module and bring some of those like workloads onto Akash and have some sort of a coexistence with Amazon, where you can maybe put like less mission critical workloads on Akash and sort of have like that level of introduction. So this composability opens up a lot of opportunities for us to integrate with much bigger ecosystems to gain adoption, right? So that's why focusing on a builder is extremely important, instead of focusing on a quote unquote a WordPress user who's going to do some simple website and just host something, but instead of like someone who's going to host mission critical applications, right? So a lot of these like amazing work we're doing. On top of that, we're also introducing CLI. I'm really excited. Adam, my co-founder and CTO, he's phenomenal for designing like developer interfaces, and he's designing this like really cool. I don't know if you use something called Packer or like any of the HashiCorp tools. They're known for their like developer experience. And HashiCorp is a creator of Terraform, Packer, Vault. Vault is a security framework. But they're sort of like taking a lot of lessons from HashiCorp HCL language or HashiCorp configuration language and incorporating that into Akash. And really excited. This is going to be the first time something like this crazy is in the cloud, right?
Awesome.
So we're not doing something just new for crypto. We're just doing new for the cloud native infrastructure, something people haven't seen outside as well. So really excited to reemphasize more on the developer and the builder, and because that's the kind of stuff that's going to give us exponential growth.
I think you've laid out a really exciting, I think, roadmap for how Akash is reaching out to developers and encouraging this kind of composable use cases. If I'm using the jargon correctly, like what you're saying, I'm just going to feed this back to you, regurgitate it back to you, smooth as a smooth brain. So basically, what you're saying is that by increasing the making the cloud computing more composable, people can deploy Akash, make Akash deployments that are kind of working in tandem with existing like Amazon Web Service deployments or what have you. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. That's one of the benefits, right? Another big benefit.
Just one.
Like,
that's just one.
So
the other
one,
big,
right?
The other big thing I'm getting from you, and I mean, people can correct me if I'm wrong. This is one of the things, because it was noted in your bio that you guys had originally launched on Ethereum, and Ethereum being this sort of virtual machine, and also what I see, one of the great things about Ethereum is that they've done a fantastic job of reaching out to and communicating with developers and trying to build tools that encourage and feed builders, basically. And it sounds to me like the strategy that you're coming up with is to try to speak the language of developers and to give them more options, more exciting opportunities for deployments and for controlling and coding these cloud deployments than currently exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Builders are our number one focus. I mean, we build tools for builders, right? And not only Ethereum, I've had experience seeing Firebase grow from 0 users to the massive user base they have.
Right.
It's always, and I remember going to Firebase's office back in the day, in 2013, 2014 timeframe, and I'm seeing this roadmap on their wall, and the biggest milestones were always framework integrations. Right? So framework integrations are super important because they open up distribution channels, right? So framework integrations would be something like, for them, it was like they had, I think, I don't remember the JavaScript frameworks in 2014, but the biggest break they really got was Angular integration. So Firebase, when they launched, it was just a cloud database, in a very hostile market. I'm talking about databases, the majority of the databases, most successful ones were open source, Postgres and MySQL in 2014. So if you come up with a closed source cloud database, I mean, you're a joke, right? So they introduced themselves in a hackathon as this really quick way of like bootstrapping an application and, no hassle sort of like deployment of your application. But for them to be taken seriously, they needed a launchpad. And Angular integration was a launchpad. Because Angular, they've gotten so good and so easy integrating the Angular, you can build a Firebase application in a matter of minutes. And Google loved it so much, it became part of the documentation, it became part of the front page. So if you go to Angular's front page back in the day, you had Firebase integration. So that put them at a whole different level. So focusing on the builders and focusing on problems early enough is very, very important for the distribution. Because Akash, by itself, is a very powerful system, but it's not the easiest thing to do, easiest thing to use. Right? I myself find it hard to use, right? And that's not the point. The point is not the easy part. The point is the powerful part. The easy part comes through more hyper-focused use cases, right? Like one of the things we're doing is focusing on a builder means I like Starport. Starport is a beautiful application that lets you, create layer 1 chains on CosmWasm in a matter of minutes. It gives you, I don't know if you tried it, but the scaffolding is very powerful. You would be able to come up with your own a basic functioning blockchain. You can boot up a node and give you a view application, a JavaScript application that interacts with your blockchain. It gives you a faucet, gives you all the bootstrapping accounts, does all the hard work for you. It's beautiful to actually create a Cosmos SDK chain. But it's a little hard, but there's no integration to launch a testnet. So I thought it'd be cool to do something like Starport launch testnet, right? As a matter of minutes on Akash, permissionlessly. So you can actually get to the user in the early days of the life cycle. Now, when they're thinking about going to production, of course, they're going to, they already have the SDL files, they already have the containers, they already have the workflow design, and they're going to encourage and validate this to use Akash, right? So getting, introducing Akash early in the life cycle of a developer is critical, I think, for adoption. So these composability features are going to get us there. And if you think about what's happening today, we're seeing the largest migration of Web 2 to Web 3, hands down. Like last night I was hanging out with one of my favorite developers who's designing this beautiful system. He was thinking of a closed source Web 2 system. It's a brand new database for JavaScript based on Postgres. He's a creator of famous library, and he's really a popular open source developer. But now he's considering doing Web3 fully open source, owned by the users. And people like that are, and super excited about them. They're building an Akash, of course. It's going to be one of those Akash native applications. Unlike anything you've ever seen in the world.
Nice.
I'll tell you more about it. But people like that are building on top of Web3, and we have to support them, right? We have to support this revolution. And Akash is going to be positioned to support this type of users and builders that are doing amazing stuff. And for them, it's not about having a web UI. They don't care about web UI. None of them use a web UI. They're about the power behind the system. And I remember I've been using Kubernetes since 2014. If you remember Kubernetes in 2014, it had no documentation. The documentation is you got to look at the source code and figure out what it does. And it had a beautiful composable orchestration system It didn't have the most powerful scheduler, nothing, but it worked really well, and you can compose different applications. And that led to Kubernetes being currently used by 80% of the cloud. So I've seen firsthand what a hyper-composable developer first systems do. And I've seen firsthand the successes they had. I've seen firsthand the failures they had. And we're taking all the learnings of our predecessors from Web 2 and applying that to Web 3 and using the catalyst of decentralization as a hyper growth engine that Web 3 provides. So super excited. 2021 was a preview for Akash. We showed the world what Akash can do. I think 22 and 22 is when the world shows what they can do with Akash. I'm so excited. And this is a year which defines us really.
Wow, that was a great sum up of what to expect. I feel like for me, when you were describing Firebase and that how Angular was this launch pad and it turned into something where you were saying Google adopted it and was like, well, we need to use this, and then eventually that became an acquisition. I don't think Google acquires,
I know the whole story if you want to hear
companies. Yeah,
happened.
it's just like that doesn't happen if they don't see a massive amount of value in it and the value of how it makes developers' jobs so much easier. And to me, I see like the goal is not to get acquired by Google anymore. It's like the goal is to get acquired by the community. Yep. Web3, that's what, to me, it's like, if that's what the goal is, it seems like Akash, working with Osmosis and the other opportunities for sovereign chains in Cosmos, but also pretty much anywhere that you folks can do business is like, I feel like the goal, based on what you've been saying, it sounds like it's within reach. And we just have to see what the world does with Akash. Without Akash.
Yeah, and like a lot of cool things. I think a lot of the growth, you can use Akash directly, but a lot of the growth is going to come from higher level protocols, right?
Right.
Like a friend of mine I was talking about, he's building a Web3 version of WordPress that's JavaScript native and Postgres native.
Wow.
So they have this like amazing way to scaffold your entire application completely in Postgres. So it does bitwise operations for authentication, so it's really fast when you do like authentication stuff, which usually is much higher level, right? But they're going directly to the data level and Postgres level. It does all, and he's built like several companies before that, that do website generation. Brandcast, he's the founder of Brandcast, which is a very successful Web2 company. So there, people like that are like building amazing tools. And one of the big chunks of the application is hosting, right? Hosting your infrastructure, and they're going to do Akash, and they're going to do an IBC and the Cosmos. So basically, you'll be able to generate a website, a full end-to-end, Web2 application with different modules you can plug in that are heavily integrated with the database on the Postgres side of things. The Postgres and the JavaScript applications running on Akash, paid using their token, and the exchange happens over Osmosis, right? The swap happens over Osmosis, invisible to the end user. All this happens in the background, IBC, and boom, and you have a fully sovereign, Web3 WordPress. So those are some of the just tip of the iceberg we're seeing.
Dude,
being
we
built
got to
right
do
now.
we have to do a whole other updates on all these cool decentralized applications that can kind of integrate with Osmosis, because that just blew my mind that we get some kind of like a JavaScript based WordPress that's decentralized. I don't know. It just sounds like there's a lot of exciting. There's so many things that can happen when you look at Akash as like a platform. Like you said, not as their higher level applications, but it's just such an exciting topic. Actually, there's just too much for me really to. We have to do another edition, but I do want to open it up for people who have questions, because we have about 13 to 15 minutes left. Is there, Sonny, are you there? Is there someone there who can, I bring people on as speakers, and does anyone have questions for Greg or for Sonny or?
So
Okay.
one more thing, quick.
Yeah, sure.
So I think one of the things that we have on our roadmap is the services marketplace by end of 2022. That's really when we start going on the offensive, right? So far it's really Akash is a basic service. You can host containers, but with marketplace, we'll be able to host other services like databases, whatnot. I think that's where Osmosis comes into more critical part, because if we have to enable smooth payments for all these services in a single wallet, right, in an interchain wallet, and the liquidity that provides the exchange infrastructure, the swap infrastructure between these tokens, because each of them have their own sovereign chains. That's when I think Osmosis becomes a critical payment rail for the Web3 infrastructure, and that's the kind of stuff I'm really excited about. And that we're putting the work, and by end of this year we should have the services marketplace. I'm really excited about it.
Wow. Okay. I will want to hear Sonny's take on that as well. But yes, thank you.
What was that?
I'm talking about a backend services marketplace. Like today, Amazon has about 300 services, right? And Akash is building a decentralized marketplace for services. And we assume a lot of these services are going to have their own tokens, like a database or a load balancer or a caching server, right? Some of them are crypto native, some of them are not. So for that, the infrastructure, the payment infrastructure, needs stable swaps, needs interchain, or like a federated account, or things like that. And I think Osmosis is very well positioned to provide infrastructure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that for me, one of the main things that excited me. I've been very close to the project for a long time, and I think the two things that excited me the most were, one was the main one was this, which was the point of putting marketplaces on chain is if you expect that DAOs are going to become more important economic actors over time, then a DAO doesn't have a way to pay for an AWS deployment, because it just can't open an Amazon account. But a DAO can pay for an Akash deployment because it is a on-chain transaction. And so I think that Osmosis, once interchain accounts is ready, which is the feature for accounts to make transactions on other chains, would love to have the Osmosis community pool host the front end for Osmosis via on Akash, but paid for by the community pool, and then have it so the only way to update the deployment is via governance. So it's that's how we become truly decentralized, where it's hey, only the DAO can, no centralized dev team can control the front end. Only the DAO has the ability to choose what upgrades go into the front end. And so I think that's and I think that getting more and more Ethereum apps, for example, as well, to start.
Hi there, Sonny. It's a pleasure to be on the same platform.
Sorry, give me one second.
Oh wait, hold on a second. I think, can we let Sonny finish, and we'll bring. We had Will, and I see you. We'll get you on for question. Just one second. Can you just hang tight?
So I think that's sort of the main thing that I think would be, I think that having DAOs be able to participate in this is going to be what's going to be the game changer here.
I agree. Data services for DAOs. That's the future. And I'm pretty excited to get Osmosis. And some of the features we realized was we need to at least get, from experience standpoint, on par with the existing Web2 infrastructure. And that means automated deployments, right? GitHub Actions integrations. All these cool things that you used to, should just, you shouldn't think about Akash when you're deploying an Akash. You should focus on what you're building and what you deploy, as Osmosis front end, and the back end should handle. So I think there's a lot of those updates as well coming, so it'll make just regular deployments much simpler. So I'm really excited.
Okay. Sonny, you said there were two things that you were excited about. So if you remember the second one, please interrupt us.
The second one was basically around GPUs. So because I think with especially on like what like Greg mentioned earlier, when you like who's going to be providing compute capacity on Akash it has to be people who have like cloud scale like or reliability infrastructure, which is not the average hobbyist. For example, I'm not gonna the Osmosis front end is not going to be hosted on like spare compute capacity on someone's desktop because we just need that like reliability that doesn't have the same level of reliability that we need. But I think where hobbyist compute does come in is in GPUs for so I because last year before like doing Osmosis, after I left Tendermint, I was like playing around with random stuff, and I created this Twitter bot of my trained on all my past tweets. And I started actually building it out as an app that anyone can build their own Twitter bot based on trained on their own tweets. But like all that training actually requires running GPU workloads to train all that data. And it's like it's relatively pretty fast. And it turns out that like GPUs are actually have way less sort of economies of scale than normal compute does. And so like the GPUs on cloud platforms, existing cloud platforms are relatively expensive. And so, and I think that like as Ethereum proof of work like ships away, we're going to have like a lot of excess GPU capacity that's sitting there idle now. And so I think having that like GPU compute market that like anyone can provide compute to, I think will be really interesting.
Yeah, super excited about GPUs as well. So there's a lot of work being done right now, and we'll give you a big update on GPUs very soon.
Awesome. Yeah, and definitely to go into all the other things that you were talking about, Greg, it seems like we're going to have you back on. But so thank you for coming on today. And I did want to get to some questions. We had Will Saul. Yeah, hit it.
Yeah, hey, this is Will from Regen Network. Greg, I read your white paper back when it came out, but I'm a little rusty at this point. And wanted to hear about what it's like to be a hardware provider. Like who are these infrastructure providers who are providing the cloud compute? What are the economics? How does it tie into validation? I assume there's a split between validators and cloud compute providers. But you were just talking about the kind of the economies compared to traditional providers like AWS and how you can have lower cost. How does that work out? Why is that you can undercut those prices? And who are these people running infrastructure on Akash? What's it like to run a cloud compute node on Akash?
Great question. Hey, Will. So right now there are about 79 providers, I believe, on Akash. A lot of them are mom and pop, like small scale data centers, either using the compute for themselves and have excess capacity, right? But the majority of the compute that's consumed comes from bigger corporations, right? Like Equinix. Equinix happened to be the biggest supplier. And they really understood, they offloaded, I believe, like 10% of their underutilized supply. So Equinix is the largest largest interconnected data center network in the world. They do bare metal infrastructure, and they tend to have a ton of excess capacity. It's about 85% or so computing capacity in data centers is not used. For them, if they don't offload the capacity, it's useless, right? So they're offering they're offering significantly lower costs right now, and majority of the cost comes from them. So the cost savings comes from them, right? 85% or so. And you do have smaller providers like Orion and a few VPSs that are offloading their capacity. So essentially, Akash becomes like the spot market for the globe, right? If you're familiar with the Amazon spot market, which only provides Amazon compute, Akash is a spot market where if you're a smaller provider and you really don't have the capability to provide a spot instance, you come to Akash and offer that, right? But we see that changing quite a bit with GPUs, because GPUs now don't necessarily mandate cloud-grade compute, but pretty much any home computer with a powerful enough GPU can offer compute, right? We don't anticipate home-grade computers providing latency sensitive or serving latency sensitive applications, but something like a home computer can serve latency sensitive application, right? So to answer your question, yeah, most of the compute comes from existing infrastructure that where the capital has already been invested. We don't anticipate new providers coming just to build businesses on top of Akash, because the model for Akash has heavily been reutilizing what's already out there. But I think that's going to continue even with home computers. It's just gaming computers or mining computers that have a lot of GPUs will soon enough offer an Akash. But by the time I think new providers that are coming to make money on Akash, the prices have to compete with the cloud, and it's going to be a different economics. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That was a great rundown.
Maybe, but we're also seeing some innovators like, people that use, like Texas, for example, right? So Texas has an unregulated grid, and there's a lot of overage compute power that comes from renewables in Texas. Folks that have infrastructure that can utilize this overage from renewables can effectively run data centers for profit, because most of the cost in a data center is cost for cooling, right? So which is electricity, not the actual compute, not the cost to run the compute. So Akash is pretty well positioned for someone like that that has expertise in hardware, not necessarily in software, to offer and to instantly become a cloud provider by plugging into Akash. And Akash does the application layer provisioning and orchestration.
Awesome. I kind of feel like I kind of understand what you're saying. I do think that if we sucked up the renewable, overage from Texas, and then they had another deep freeze and people didn't have heat, that we would get in trouble. But I don't know if I fully understand the problem.
So right now, the renewables, the overage has to be wasted. They had to burn it. There's really no way to consume overage. I mean, you don't have the battery capacity. So there are centers like Compute North, like data centers that are located next to these like windmills and whatnot in Texas, and just consume this overage, right? So and that can effectively come out of Akash. I don't see why not. So I think there's going to be a whole with a decentralization where anybody can get these capabilities in a permissionless way. That's going to be a catalyst for a lot of the innovation that we are yet to see, right? So if you think renewables are the future, and if Akash solves the overage problem, why not? So a lot of excitement. We're just really touching the surface, right, with what we can do with decentralization. We're barely in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just a tip.
Super excited. Just a tip.
I mean, look, I think that hopefully if it's the tip of the iceberg, we're all hoping it's an iceberg that's not melting. But and so that's my weird way of saying I do think renewables are the future. So maybe we're due for doing an episode of updates in the future that would be about that, where we can have folks from like Will from Regen and Akash, talking about how these different systems could work together. If there's any other, I saw we had someone from Centric Finance. Someone had a question earlier. If anyone else has a question, I have a question here from
Gabe is up.
Oh, Gabe is up. Okay, I also have a question from Telegram once that's done. Okay, what's up, Gabe? Welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for taking the time, guys. So my question is, how easy is it for existing applications and websites to switch over from something like Amazon to Akash?
Right. So the answer is depends. So Akash doesn't yet offer all the services Amazon does, right? So Amazon offers about 300 different services that are managed. Akash offers one service, which is container hosting. So if you're running on something called Fargate, Amazon Fargate, it's fairly straightforward to switch from Amazon to Akash. But if you're using S3, or if you're using S3, the database service on Amazon, you have to self-manage on Akash. So the answer really depends on the application. Something like a decentralized application where you're hopefully not depending on any managed services is fairly quick. But if you're a heavily centralized Web 2 application that relies on a lot of the managed services Amazon offers, the transition is not that quick.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Gabe. I had a quick question from, this is actually from one of our admins on Telegram, one of the Osmosis admins, Crypto Assassin, had this question. What happens if someone misuses their server, like running a botnet, for example? Who will be accountable? And can the tenant address later be blacklisted from resubscription, et cetera? And then also, are there any plans for VPS services?
So unfortunately, there's no way to stop people from misusing your compute. So it's like if someone's paying for it, they're going to use it the way they want to use it. Right? Akash is designed to be censorship resistant, and of course, that the one of the pitfalls is that you're going to have misuse. But the provider, if you're running the compute, you have complete control on who you let in. You have control over ACL lists. Unfortunately, right now it's a little more complicated. You have to do that manually yourself on your node. But I see a future where that could be simplified. So people can develop tools to block websites from being deployed onto your service. So the point of Akash is complete sovereignty, right? Complete sovereignty for the provider and for the tenant. Tenant can run whatever they want to run. Provider can choose whoever they want to host. So if something really bad is being hosted on Akash that no provider wants to serve, that content won't be served. As long as there's one single provider is willing to serve a content, it will be served on Akash. So right. Akash doesn't really dictate on what content can go and cannot go in. It's a feature. It's not a pitfall, and that's what makes it very censorship resistant. And we hope, and we hope the society will act in good faith, right? If you're a provider that you see a botnet being run, you don't want to host that and just kick them out, and so that you don't get blacklisted.
Right. So it's kind of like a tit for tat, where someone could launch a bot, a botnet on a provider, but the provider can then say, hey, you know what, that's not cool. And it's not censored on the Akash level. It would be from the provider level based on what your principles are.
Yeah, we do foresee better tools to self-moderate for providers, right? The tools are not there yet, but we do see an opportunity for people to build those tools. And I think as Akash gets adoption, as more serious websites start moving under Akash, you're going to see a lot of this innovation that happens. But it's only time. Self-moderation is important.
And what about the question about any plan for VPS services?
Don't know what VPS. So VPS, in the traditional sense that you can actually rent a box and host that, use SSH. You can actually do right now. In February we have a testnet for a mainnet upgrade, a major upgrade that allows for SSH access and persistent storage and a lot of cool features that are coming up. So essentially, you'll be able to SSH into your containers running on Akash. Right now, you can do that on the testnet, but soon on the mainnet in a month or 45 days time. So you do have VPS style capabilities that are coming to Akash. People like to have their own little SSH servers that they can log into and relay packets or whatnot. You'll be able to do that.
Awesome.
In a few months, yeah.
Sunny, do you think, can we take another question, or I leave this to you?
Yeah, I think we can do the last part. There's 3 people left. So I guess CNR was next.
Yes, thank you so much. Kevin, it's a question for you. It's more of a support question. I don't know if it's already been covered or not. I was playing about with the DEX and I managed to successfully convert my XPRT over to UST. I then proceeded to transfer the UST over to Kepler. Now, when I'm looking to deposit it back to the Osmosis DEX, it does give me that option, and the fees are paid in Luna. Now, I do have enough Luna to cover the transaction fee, but unfortunately, I'm not able to deposit my UST back from Kepler to the Osmosis DEX. I was wondering if there's anything in the pipeline.
Okay, so here's what I would like to say is thank you for the question. So the Osmosis Support DAO is responsible for bringing on, I think, about a dozen new admins and moderators on our various different channels. And I would say that the best thing to do, there is a solution to this. There is an answer. We're going to be talking about what we've been doing to massively increase the support staff that can answer to your question and anyone like it. And we're going to talk about that today I think it's in 3 hours at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. UTC. And in the meantime, if you were to go to our Discord or possibly Telegram, that's addressing an admin there is the best way to get an answer to your question. We have real human beings who are here to answer that. And that's going to be my current answer rather than doing the full tech support on the call. But thanks for the question.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Polymath.
So thank you so much, guys. Hey, I just had a quick one. I hope I can ask this to you, Greg. I just wanted to understand, can you share with us your client acquisition model, how you guys really go out and drive new business and go for the companies that are really going to bring the most revenue to the business?
Right. So Akash is at early stage. We just reached product market fit. And we don't consider our users as clients per se in the traditional sense of a company going and doing business and doing sales and sales calls and acquiring clients. We're not there yet, right? I can't comfortably go to someone using Amazon and be like, hey, come to Akash, right? No, our users right now are innovators and users that really see value proposition very clearly. So biggest value proposition for Akash right now is cost, right? Cost is, it's 1/5 cheaper. Where is cost very important? Well, it's very important when you have, compute heavy applications and when you have compute heavy applications, you do have an Amazon, but Akash doesn't provide all the services Amazon provides. So you can't just go to someone spending $1 million on Amazon and ask them to switch to Akash. It doesn't make sense. So, but if you look at mining, for example, right? Mining is essentially cost arbitraging, compute arbitraging. You essentially pay less for compute to mine a token, and then sell that token in a marketplace at higher rate, and you make profit. Akash is perfect. So we go to mining communities. In mining communities, they're not communities; they're not companies. You can't go to CEO of a mining community. There's no CEOs to call up. So we go to communities like PKT Cash, for example. Usually the acquisition model starts off with there's someone in our community that experiments with the mining model and sees some profitability and talks about it. And we go approach the community and we understand the value proposition and clearly communicate it and see if there's alignment there. And once we see alignment, we increase awareness in the community through various content. And usually that comes through our community members producing different content, like you see what in PKT Cash, YouTube videos, articles, and whatnot. And then we establish support into the community so for people that have questions, right? So we have seen quite a bit of success with that cycle, increasing awareness, increasing education, establishing support in a community, and moving on to other communities, right? So right now, the priority for Akash is not necessarily revenue, but the use cases that add exponential value in the future, right? So you got to really think about, and this is how Firebases and Kubernetes and all these platforms have launched, and identifying those very, very strong use cases. Hopefully, Akash native use cases like Osmosis, for example, is an Akash native use case because Osmosis is a DAO, right? And it's a DAO. There's no CEO of a DAO, right? It's Sunny that likes Akash, people in the Osmosis community that like Akash, that are going to experiment with Akash and going to do a proposal. and there's a group buy-in that happens, right? So our acquisition strategy in a Web3 is very different from a Web2 model, which is community driven, and a lot of that comes through organically instead of a sales call. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much. So I guess last thing, how can the community help? Akash, community members, people like myself that support Akash, that believe in Akash, what can we do to help you get more DAOs involved or other communities involved?
Awesome. Possibilities. Show possibilities, what you can do with Akash. Like I said, so far it's been us showing what you can do with Akash, but now we love to see what the community can do, Akash. A beautiful thing would be a lot of the DAOs have websites that are public. The source code is public, right? Open source. So take that open source code, build a container, and deploy that container onto Akash, run a mirror, hopefully set up a continuous deployment using GitHub Actions. I'll be publishing some of the easy ways to do that very soon. I think Osmosis is going to be starting doing that very soon. So we're going to publish something where you can replicate the process to other DAOs and just make a proposal in a DAO that you're part of to use Akash, right? If you make it simple and easy for the DAO members to upgrade the website, I think that's a no-brainer. And that's a story that we can go tell other people. And enough stories will give us that sort of lift we need to take off, and that's how we win.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for sharing, man. Well, if you need anyone else on your team, hit me up.
Hello.
Awesome.
I've already slid into your DMs, Greg. Cheers.
Thanks for the question. Can we take
Marty?
one? Yeah, let's do one more. Another one.
We can do Marty welding, I think. Yeah.
So, Greg, those last two answers probably did about 80% of what I was interested in. But what I think I heard is that you're not super concerned right now with maybe demand. Could you talk a little bit more about supply? Is that something that you are concerned about? I noticed that you're launching, the GPU side of the house, and as a Bitcoin and miner person going back to 2017, the mining thing certainly is, part of my thinking. Thank you.
It's the opposite. I'm not concerned about supply. I'm concerned about demand. I'm certainly want demand. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just classifying what the demand should look like. Ideally, what we want right now is more use cases and stories that tell a better story, so we can have demand in exponential manner. I'm not interested in gradual demand, right? Yes, we do have consistent growth. If you look at the active deployments, they've been around 450 range. Active deployments are a good indication because they indicate new users as well as churn. So as long as active deployment stays stable, that means we have enough sort of churn and new demand that's kind of canceling out or balancing out, right? So I'm definitely interested in demand, not so much supply. And the reason for that is we have, there's so much supply that we get hit up on a daily basis. There's a lot of computers out there that's not being used. It's enormous, right? But there's not too many people willing to switch to a decentralized cloud, maybe because, the experience is subpar. It's difficult, in all honesty. It's not, you don't have the user interfaces and all the things that you're used to in a Web2 world to switch. And two, a lot of heavy friction, like acquiring UKT tokens, and there's quite a bit of work you need to do, right? Unless you really believe in something, in a decentralized feature, it's hard for you to switch. So we're certainly interested. That's why we want to attract more stories that people can really, the people using Akash can tell. I mean, if you look at proof of stake or proof of work mining, for example, right? The Akash price point is amazing for proof of work mining. We love to see those stories. People actually making money, people making a living doing Akash, right? DAOs, for example, an amazing story. Yeah, we want to see more of that. And more developer tooling being built on Akash. We love to see a lot of CI/CD pipelines. It's an amazing use case because Akash is low cost, it's permissionless. You can run something like a continuous deployment like Jenkins worker on Akash and actually even build a very profitable company based on that. So developer tooling on top of Akash is phenomenal, right? So we love to see those stories because those are going to be the distribution channels that are going to get us the usage and when the usage comes, it's going to be exponential, not going to be gradual. It's not going to be linear. You know what I mean? So like most successful projects don't have linear growth, they have exponential growth. So we got to identify on more strategic sort of like initiatives than pushing the ball a little ahead. You know what I mean? So that pushing a ball a little ahead comes in growth stage. You're not there yet. We just hit product market fit. So identifying those use cases is what I want to see from a demand standpoint.
Great question, Marty. Thank you.
Welding?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey.
Welcome.
So I have a question, Greg. Is there a Binance listing on the horizon?
Well, you know, I can't really comment on it.
Okay, that's fine.
But in general, I'll tell you the ecosystem where we are. I think in Cosmos, like Osmos is crushing it, and they're still not on Binance, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that, I think, this is my thesis, right? I think the reason for that, Binance and Coinbase and all the major exchanges haven't supported Cosmos assets, and Cosmos is not the easiest chain to support, right? So a lot of technical integration work that needs to happen in order to support Cosmos assets. So since like I believe Kava was the last Cosmos asset that was listed in the major exchanges, or not even Coinbase. And since then, we haven't had any Cosmos assets like listed. Unless you have an ERC20 pair, it's impossible to get listed today, right? So the choice for Akash is like, well, do an ERC20 pair, which is kind of like not core to Akash's mission. Like we want you to get an Akash token, use it instantly, right? Not like have a bridge converted, unless the experience is like solved. I really hate the ERC20 pair. Like I just despise it, you know? Anyway. So the choice for given in front of us is like create a ERC20 pair, you know, hopefully run it on a bridge, you know, and pray for the security. I mean, I think Gravity Bridge does a good job. I'm really excited for the. If I were to do an ERC pair, I want it to be an Osmosis. I want that level of experience. You know what I mean? Like so, like everything else just subpar. Like it's really bad.
Okay, no, it's fine. You know, there's a rumor going on. You know, and I just wanted to ask. You know, not that I use Binance. I hate Binance. I love Osmosis. You know, it's the best thing that's happened to crypto.
Thanks.
What's the rumor?
No, that you know Binance is gonna list Akash. You know, that's the rumor. But
well,
that
right.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I think this is what's going to happen in general. Cosmos. I think it's going to be like one slew of Cosmos listings. I think it's going to be Osmosis, XPRT, DVPN, all these like amazing tools that I actually use. You know, like DVPN I actually use. I use the tokens for my VPN on my iPhone and I pay using DVPN. Osmosis, I use it every day, right? Like Akash, I use every day, right? A lot of amazing projects in Cosmos I actually use every day, you know, and they have real utility that are not getting listed versus something like, I don't know, Shiba Inu, you know, like ERC20 pair, like, you know. So yeah, I think it's just going to be like one slew of listings that are going to happen. I am seeing quite a bit of interest from a lot of exchanges on like supporting Cosmos assets. And I think like Coinbase has this thing called Rosetta implementation, and that's seriously like made advances in like supporting Cosmos assets. I think it's just going to be one slew of listings, but yeah, that's the limitation right now.
Okay, thanks, Welder. I have one more. This came from one of our admins on Telegram, Maquina, who's a new admin, who said this is a question that we face from many users. This is for Sunny. How is the CertiK audit going? Can you give any security update of Osmosis? How safe? What are the worst case vulnerabilities? How can we say this to a normal user?
Hey, yeah, I actually have to jump off onto another call right now, but the really quick answer is the CertiK audit is completed already. It's actually been completed for a couple of months actually. I think they're just blocked on us giving them the go ahead or something to like publish the audit results, but basically there was no real vulnerabilities found, so it's all which is a good result. Either a good result or we need better auditors. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we got to jump off here.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonny. This has been great, Greg. To everybody else, just really quickly, in 2 hours at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. UTC, we have our community town hall. All of the details will be posted on my Twitter and on the Osmo support DAO Twitter. And if you want to get on the mic for that, you will come to our Discord and message our admins. You have to DM them. They will never DM you first. So either Robo McGobo or you can message Madcat on Discord. They will give you a link. You will join our StreamYard session. You have to have a mic and or a video, and we'll have you on the mic for the Q&A. We look forward to talking to the community in about 2 hours. And it's going to be streaming everywhere on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and also we'll be able to watch it on Discord. But to join it, there'll be that procedure. Okay. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in today. I saw over, I don't know, it was 333 listeners, which I think is a 333 sign. And upwards and onwards.
Thank you so much, guys. This was the most fun update I had, and I'm glad it's on Osmosis. The first update there to 2020 is on Osmosis. So
it's in the books,
I love
man.
this ecosystem. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Greg. I look forward to talking to you more about all the cool things that people can do with Akash. And till next time.
Yes. Keep building.
Indeed. Bye, everybody.